Alright, so last time we learned how to figure out the molar mass of a substance. Today we're going to look at how to take that to the next step and to figure out how many grams is equal to a mole of a substance, how many grams to put in when we need a certain amount of a substance, and how to change the grams of a substance into moles of a substance. Because when you're going to be using the ideal gas law, you've got to figure out how many moles of a gas you're dealing with. So, let's start off with a simple problem. How many moles is 16.2 grams of carbon? So, to figure that out, we start with what we're given. We have 16.2 grams of carbon. And I'm going to place that over 1. Then, we're going to multiply by a fraction. I know, fraction's scary. But we're going to multiply by a fraction so that we can figure out how many moles this is. To do this, we need the molar mass of carbon. If we look on the periodic table, we know the molar mass of carbon, right here, is 12.01 grams per mole. So, we have to decide, are we going to multiply by 12.01 grams over 1 mole, or we're going to multiply by 1 mole over 12.01 grams. You can flip it because it's equivalent. Well, we see we're given grams here, so we want grams in the bottom of our fraction here to cancel out. So instead of doing 12.01 grams over 1 mole, we're going to do 1 mole over 12.01 grams. We'll plug that in. My grams unit cancel. I'm left with moles. So to figure out how many moles of carbon I have in 16.2 grams of carbon, I take 16.2 and I multiply it by 1 over 12.01. To do this in a calculator, you have to put this whole thing in parentheses. So when I do that, I get 1.35 moles of carbon. That's our answer. So we took our gram amount and we multiplied by 1 over the molar mass of carbon to get how many moles of carbon we have. We can easily reverse the process too. Let's take a different element this time. How many grams of helium is in 2.5 moles? So, similar process to what we did with carbon, but instead of starting with grams, we're starting with moles. So I take my given, 2.5 moles of helium, and I place it over 1. And I'm going to multiply by our conversion factor, which is the molar mass of helium. We can find that on the periodic table. So if we look, we're going to put this in parentheses again, some sort of fraction, but we need to know what the molar mass of helium is. On the periodic table, you would look it up, and you would see that the molar mass of helium is, hang on, let me get my periodic table. I know it's 4 and something. Do, 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 do. 4.01 grams per mole. So now we gotta look. Do we keep 4.1 on the top, or do we move it to the bottom? If we look at our starting unit, we have moles. So that means our bottom has to have moles. So we're going to put 1 mole on the bottom. On the top is 4.01 grams. Then my moles cancel and I'm left with helium and grams, which is what I want. So to figure out how many grams of helium 2.5 moles is, we do 2.5 times 4.01. And we get 10.02 grams of helium. So, simple, right? Not too bad. Let's do a couple more, but this time let's use some compounds. So, how many moles is 27.5 grams of water? So, the first step, we have to figure out what the molar mass of water is. So if you remember last time, we figured out the molar mass of substances by adding together the atoms that make it up. So if I look, I have hydrogen. I have 2 atoms, and hydrogen weighs 1.01 grams. And oxygen, I have 1 atom, and oxygen is 16.0 grams. So I get 2.02 and 16. I add those together, I get 18.02 grams per mole. So that's our molar mass of water. So now that we know the molar mass of water, we're going to use that to figure out how many moles of water we have in 27.5 grams. So I start with my 27.5 grams of H2O, place it over 1, and now we know we got to multiply by our molar mass. So we have to look, are we going to do 18.02 grams over 1 mole, or we're going to do 1 mole over 18.02 grams. If we look at the fraction over here, we see grams are on top, which means my grams have to go on the bottom over here. So we're going to flip the molar mass and multiply it by it that way. So remember, you have to put the whole fraction in parentheses in order to multiply it. If you're using your phone as a calculator, I recommend you try to find a regular scientific calculator if you have one. If you don't, it's okay. So 27.5 times 1 over 18.02 gives me 1.53 moles of water. And that's our final answer for this problem. We'll try one more example. We'll do this backwards. So, let's erase this. So for this problem, how many grams of C2H2O is 2.2 moles? We start out just like we did before. We got to figure out the molar mass of C2H2O. So I know I have C, H, and O. There's two of those, one of those. Carbon's molar mass off the periodic table is 12.01. Hydrogen's molar mass off the periodic table is not 2. It is 1.01. And oxygen's molar mass off the periodic table is 16. I add those together. I get 42.04 grams per mole. And that is the molar mass. So now that I have that, I can figure out how many grams 2.2 moles is. I take my number, 2.2 moles, put it over 1, and I multiply by the fraction, by the molar mass. For this one, does the molar mass go on top or the bottom? Well, since I have moles on top here, I need moles on the bottom. So I put 1 mole on the bottom, and I put my 42.04 grams on top. That ensures that my moles cancel. And then I just multiply. We get 92.49 grams as our final answer. I don't expect you to be perfect at this overnight. It takes practice. Make sure if you have questions, you're asking them either in the chat room or you're sitting in on the video call. I can go forward and do a couple examples on the video calls, but make sure that you viewed this video first before you ask me questions. All right, good luck. We'll see you next time.